Patrick, we made about 90 videos, finishing, well, actually in the months of January and February last. It took us about 2 months to do it. Each video is 15 minutes or some more, up to 20. So I would like to send out a message to all Christians through your channel, George, to really start studying that book as never before, because the times we live in now, whilst I am not a prophet and I've never predicted a date for the end of times and second coming, it seems obvious to anyone who's following the signs that have been given that we are in the last days, and the most exciting event which will ever happen in human history will be when the great figure will land in Jerusalem and he will claim the allegiance of the whole world. His name is Jeshua, but we know him as Jesus. And of course, the book of Revelation was given by him and his father as well to the beloved disciple John. It's a very mysterious book. In fact, it's probably some of the most mysterious literature ever written, never mind religion. So I actually feel that it's extremely important to study it at great depth before anyone starts speaking about it. So therefore I came up with this booklet, History Which Has Been Foretold in the Book of Revelation. It is history written down before it happened by Neil Horan, October 2021. That's just less than a year ago. So this is 40 pages, and that gives you an idea how much history has happened that has been foretold. And I would ask all Christians to really consider the history that has been foretold rather than concentrate too much on the last days, because a lot of the book of Revelation has nothing whatsoever to do with the last days. It's history. And just to give you a few examples of the history which have been foretold, the first big event was the rise of a new Roman emperor, and he took over the empire in the year 312. His name was Constantine, and he is described as having been born of the woman, a woman which had been clothed with the sun and the moon under her feet. This is the kind of mysterious language it uses. But by careful examination, the sun was the Roman Empire. The most important and powerful country in the world at any given time is the sun. The moon is state religion. That was the pagan Roman religion. And crowned with 12 stars. There had been 12 emperors exactly up to the Emperor Domitian, starting with Caesar Augustus in the time of Christ. So all that chapter 12 is a detailed description and a very accurate description of Constantine, his rise to power, and then there was war in heaven. That was a civil war at the top in heaven, being the political rulers of the world, and the heavens today are the governments of the world. At the very top of the Roman Empire there was civil war for 10 years between Licinius and Constantine. So that's just an example of the interpretation which I have given in the videos regarding the book of Revelation. So I would ask all of you Christians, really get yourselves reading history now, especially the history of Europe and the Middle East. I would call it sacred history. And it comes right up then to our day. It foretells the rise of the European Union as a beast. That's the way it's described. And it describes the huge influence which a certain church would have. It's described as a woman riding the beast, like a jockey riding a horse. Horse has complete control of it. This great church would have such influence on the development of the European Union that it's almost like a jockey riding a horse. That's the level of it. So that then, I would say, was the biggest task of my life, and it's all now on YouTube and Facebook, my Facebook page as well. So I would ask readers to consider it. I always said many times during the videos that I'm not a prophet. I'm capable of being wrong. I'm only right if I give solid evidence for everything that I have put forward. And I hope and I genuinely believe I have given a lot of evidence for that belief.
And you were a Catholic priest. How did you go from that to your unusual understanding of prophecy?
Well, George, I have to go back now to the time shortly after I became a Catholic priest to explain how I began to develop a great interest in prophecy. And I must go back, in fact, to the second Sunday of February 1974. And I was just into my first year as a priest. I had been ordained the previous August in Killarney, County Kerry. And I happened to be passing a hall in Dartford, the Masonic Hall in Wilmington, not far outside Dartford, which of course is in Kent. And I saw a sign up, a big sign in front of the hall saying, "Signs of the end of this present age." And I thought to myself, I was cycling actually along, because my bicycle was the mode of transport I had. And I came off the bike and I thought to myself, what does this mean? Signs of the end of this present age. I know nothing about it much. So it advertised a lecture at 6:30 that Sunday evening, and I went along, and that opened a completely new chapter in my life, a wonderfully exciting chapter. I found that it was being given by the Apostolic Fellowship of Christ, a very small group who had originated with the Christadelphians. And the Christadelphians were founded by a Londoner from Hoxton Square, Dr. John Thomas, who is one of the best writers I've ever read on the Bible. He wrote many, many books on it. For instance, Elpis Israel, meaning the hope of Israel. And I've never looked back, and I've never actually felt reason to change the understanding that that fellowship gave me. They concentrated a lot on prophecy and the second coming, especially on what they call the kingdom, which will actually be a real kingdom, which will be set up. It will be just as real as the late Queen Elizabeth reigning on the throne of Windsor. It would be, instead of the throne of Windsor, it would be the throne of David, which will be established in Jerusalem. And Jesus, a descendant of David, will set up a worldwide kingdom, with he himself as the supreme king, King of Kings, with his capital city of Jerusalem, and with his royal court, who will be the saints of all the past ages, the good people. So the Christadelphians and the fellowship that I joined placed great emphasis on it, and I believe it's the very centre of the Christian gospel. So that's how I came to have an interest in prophecy.
And what's been your most successful event in drawing attention to your cause?
Well, I would say that there was two events, although in many cases people look on them not so much as successes but as failures. But certainly they did draw attention to my cause, and they were, first of all, the Grand Prix at Silverstone in the year 2003, July 2003, and then the following year in a city of Athens, I happened to meet a Brazilian citizen who happened to be an Olympic runner, and his name is Vanderlei Cordeiro de Lima. I only met him that once, and my meeting was very short with him, but of course the whole world saw it when I actually literally grabbed him, and of course he eventually ended up with the bronze medal. So although in many people's views it was, both events were events not to be celebrated, but some ways almost an embarrassment, whatever the actual view, human view of those events, what about the divine view? And certainly those two events did draw attention to my Bible message. For instance, the Sun newspaper is not known for its Christian portrayal, but it did say that it actually gave the words which were in my poster at Silverstone, which said that read the Bible, prophets, the Bible is always right. It actually did give those words, and I think when the Sun gives those words like that, you could say that you have been reasonably successful. Of course, it wasn't any dramatic response in either case, but I feel that I did manage to put the Bible and the Second Coming on the world stage, and in that sense, that's what I asked to be judged on, rather than, of course, taking away the gold medal from Van der Leyden in Lima. Yes, if he would have actually won the gold medal, he was leading the race. It doesn't guarantee that he would have won it, but he may have. All I can say is that I never meant to lay a hand on him. I apologised to him many times. I did not actually mean to lay a hand on him, but I believe certain events, and in fact a lot of events in the world and in life, are overshadowed, they're destined to happen. And I believe what happened that day in Athens was destined to happen, because I absolutely did not mean to do what I did or to push him aside. Um, it was divine intervention, I believe. That's what I believe. So those two events were the most successful events, I would say. There was a third event written by a journalist who, from what I know, was certainly not Christian, and possibly the word atheist would be a reasonable description of him, but he was one of the best Middle East writers in the last generation. His name was Robert Fisk, and he wrote for The Independent. He wrote one of the best articles about me, which surprisingly is quite accurate. And this is what I find strange. Here it is: how Christ's return caught the great and the good off guard. Frontline Beirut by Robert Fisk. That was written 5th of July 2001. He died recently in Dublin, actually, and was buried in Dublin. He seems to have become an adopted Irishman, because what I know of him, he had no Irish connections. He did study in Trinity College Dublin, but he was a brilliant Middle East correspondent. So I would say that those three events helped, but again, there was no dramatic response from any of them, because prophecy is not a subject to attract a lot of attention with the ordinary people in the street, I would say. But nevertheless, I feel that for me it was important to do it, and it's important for me to continue my mission of explaining prophecy.
What should people do if they believe in your message?
Simply, I'm not actually asking people to do anything as such, but simply to understand the message. Because it's not for us to do anything about world events that are going to happen. That will happen. And what God and His Son and the angels, because they control world events, have planned for the future is going to happen. I would say that it's proper and justifiable for Christians to pray that the final events be speeded up and then happen quicker than planned. For instance, the prayer which Christians should pray every day, the most famous prayer of all, the Our Father. Jesus said in that prayer that we should pray every single day, Thy kingdom come. But by that very act, it means that we're praying that it comes. Why pray for something to come if it's set in stone and the exact day or hour is already set? If we can't somehow speed it up, or I believe that the genuine prayers of Christians can speed up not the arrival of a war, but although that is inevitable, but the arrival of the kingdom. But I would say that it's extremely important to understand what has been foretold. And for instance, there will be a figure called the Antichrist who will arise at the end of days, who will actually try and lead the world away from accepting Christ. This is going to be a very serious issue for the whole world to face. Who will they believe? Will they believe the Antichrist or Jesus himself? And the best way to understand who the Antichrist will be is to read the prophecies and study them. And the book of Revelation is important, certainly for our day, but it's also important to see what events God has guided in history and what events God has felt reason to foretell. And it gives us more confidence to believe in the events of the future, that they too will happen exactly as foretold.
Wow, that's been fascinating. So, Neil Horan, thank you so much for your exposition of your beliefs.
You're welcome, George.
Goodbye.
Bye.